Hey guys, before we get to the show, I just wanted to tell you real quick that we have a new website and it's got a new shop feature with all of our products in there, workbooks, DVDs, Blu-rays, you name it. And we've got a promo code for you and it's going to give you 20% off of your entire cart. We'll have that a little bit later in the show. We're continuing our series of behind-the-scenes podcasts where we show you what it's like inside Appian Media during the creation of our brand new series, Out of Egypt and Lessons from the Land, the Exodus. Today on the show, we're talking with Ryan Sarver. This should be an entertaining one, folks. Ryan served as our boots-on-the-ground leader as the director of production for Out of Egypt. We quickly learned he was the right man for the job, and this project wouldn't look as good as it does without his expertise and vision. We'll laugh, we'll cry, and we'll generally have a good reflection on our team's time in Egypt and Jordan with Ryan. That's all coming up next on Inroads. Welcome to Inroads, where we share real-world examples of digital evangelism and provide tips on how you can use today's technology to spread the gospel. Learn more about us and watch our free videos at appianmedia.org. Ryan, it's good to have you, man.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Yeah.
It is about time.
It's about so. If you're listening to this or watching this on YouTube, we're probably almost a year removed from production of Out of Egypt.
Podcast time is weird time.
It is very weird time. But are you over the PTSD that is Egypt and Jordan?
I have flashbacks every once in a while. You know, you wake up in a cold sweat or whatever. But yeah, I think generally I'm over.
You're over it.
Over it. Well, I mean, yeah,
you're over it.
I'm over
I mean,
it.
he's at least agreed to meet with us.
Yes.
Which is
I
a
know,
good
right,
first
right.
step.
We're still on speaking terms.
That's right.
It took a while.
It took a while. Yeah, you got to process it. Like, what just happened?
Some intense therapy.
Yeah.
But he finally agreed.
Most of the time when we come back from production trips, there is like this 2-week to a month window where it's like, I don't want to talk to you. And I may never want to talk to you again. But we come out of that. This one took a little bit longer.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
It was, there was a lot to process coming back from it. Partly because we just didn't have time to process anything while we were there.
Well, it was happening.
I mean, that was the thing for me is like, I've been on other trips before, but it was just like, we went and didn't stop. Like, it was just go.
It was.
Yeah.
So, Ryan, before we get into all of that, our audience doesn't really know you. So tell us a little bit of, we know you, but tell us a little bit about who you are, your background, all that good stuff.
So again, Ryan Sarver. I'm married, got 2 children, and I currently run a video production company kind of on the south side of Indianapolis. I work with a lot of nonprofits and corporations and stuff doing that. Before I got into video production, though, I was a worship pastor at a church. I went to Bible college, studied some theology in seminary, got married, life got in the way, so I didn't finish seminary, so worked at a large church here in Indianapolis for several years and then went into video production back in 2010. So my full-time gig is working with nonprofits, organizations to help them tell their stories well through video. So I don't know what else you want me to say about myself.
Well, and I was trying to remember when you and I first encountered each other, but that's basically how we met, is somewhere along the line. You needed a second shooter.
We needed a second shooter. You were with another production company at some point, and I'd done something with them, and I think maybe we'd met through that. We'd kind of bumped into each other in the network of peers around Indianapolis, but that's kind of how we got connected and realized as we had some conversations about faith and the Christian walk and so forth, we realized that we had some alignment there between our work and beliefs as well.
And that's so we realized early on that we wanted to bring in kind of an outside director for Out of Egypt because we thought that this could be really good for the story. And you were the one that said, "Hey, I know a guy."
Yeah, I know a guy. He's
probably
crazy enough to agree to do this thing.
There is a level of crazy that you have to introduce this idea to people.
In all seriousness, though, like we knew we needed someone who could handle themselves, who had experience, and could really command this team. And I had worked with Ryan before, but Stuart, you had not.
No, I hadn't met him before
and,
our coffee meeting.
I'm fairly confident it was within day one on the grounds where we're like, he's the guy.
Well,
this will work.
Yeah, and even before, we interviewed several people for that position, and it was very clear that you came to the table. I remember specifically that coffee meeting. You came to the table and you asked questions that I'm like, ooh, he's asking good questions. They're the right questions. Like, he's not beating around the bush and saying, I think this would be lovely. I'd love to do this. It was like, what are you thinking about this? What about this? And it's like, yeah, that's a serious.
Yeah, it's never been a weakness of mine. It's just to come out and say what I'm thinking or whatever. But I remember that conversation. You're like, hey, I had known about Appian Media because we knew each other. We shared. I think we were Facebook friends. I think we're still Facebook friends. I think we've maintained.
That means we're real friends.
That means we're real friends. Facebook's
friends.
so real. But it's seen the work of Appian Media, and I was intrigued by it. I've been to Israel, and again, I'm a Christian. I'm deeply interested in the biblical history and so forth. And so I'd seen what Appian had done before, and you guys sent me an email like, hey, would you come in and have a conversation? I'm like, oh, this is really cool. But again, I did have a lot of questions, and you're like, oh, do you have these dates available? And what I distinctly remember out of that whole conversation is you never told me where we were going until the very end. Like,
really?
Yeah, like
that's great.
Like, I remember asking, like, so where is this? Like, what's happening?
Are we going to Illinois? What's happening here?
Exactly. I'm like,
we're going
well, this
way
is
off
be
the
different.
grid here,
This is going to be,
Ryan.
and I'm like, okay,
Way off the
where?
grid. Yeah.
Tell me where we're going.
I don't think that was intentional.
But that's how it happens.
Right.
But yeah, we probably would have scared you away if we had told you right up front.
Yeah, probably so. I would have been scared away. So anyway, we got you on board, and then we head overseas. And I think we all knew stepping into the country, because you had actually traveled internationally and shot internationally before.
Yeah. So I work with nonprofits and done stuff with the church. So I've been to Ukraine and done some work. This is a decade ago. Ukraine and done some work. Been to Cambodia and done some work. Poland and done some work. And been in Israel and done some work. And so I traveled internationally, but it's always going into a new area. You don't know what to expect until you've been there. Like, I've been to Cambodia a couple times now, and like the first time I went to Cambodia, I'm like, I don't know what I'm walking into. And then you walk in there, you're like, yeah, I got this. Like, I can go back now. It's easy. I understand cultural differences, their expectation of me, and how I can correspond with that. But going into Egypt was a totally different experience. Jet asked me as we were getting on the airplane, like, how are you feeling? And I think I said something along the lines of, I'm scared out of my mind. Maybe I exuded confidence, but kind of not knowing what to expect when we hit the ground was, and knowing already some of the logistical challenges that had been going on, kind of going, this is going to be a little bit different.
Well, and we've been to Israel before. All three of us had been to Israel before. And I actually went early with my wife, and we rented a car and went around Israel, and then we flew to Egypt. And I remember calling you and saying, dude,
brace yourself.
Brace yourself. This is going to be a culture shock. Like, we went from driving around all of Israel to like scared to leave our hotel because it was just a different world.
Right.
And then I knew that in a few days you guys were going to be walking into that world, and we are going to be like, let's shoot a documentary, and it was going to be a very different place. So kind of, we know the stories, but kind of tell for the audience, like, what did we walk into when we arrived in Egypt? Let's just go down memory lane a little
This was
bit.
Cairo, remember?
Say I do appreciate in retrospect is day one. Let me know what we were in for the rest of the time.
Exactly.
Like, it just kind of like, it wasn't like this slow, like, oh, we hit a hiccup. It's like, oh, here's a mountain as we started. So, day one we land, we get there, everybody's tired, but it's like, hey, we got to go. I think original plan was like, oh, all the video equipment's going to be at the hotel ready for us to look at. We'll be ready to go. I'm like, okay, good. And then it's like, well, no, now we've got to go get it. And I'm like, okay, we're tired. We want to kind of crash land. And so I remember driving there, and we go down again. I don't know if it's jet lag, but I'm like, this is really like it's suddenly like in a movie where it's like the sun's out and all of a sudden it's dark. Like one scene, like right in the next one, it's dark. That's how I felt, and I'm like, it's dark, and now we're in this really weird, shady alley, going into this room. There's like this hallway, and I'm like, there's no sign like rental house, and I'm like, this can't be it. And I'm like, I don't know what's happening here. So I'm like,
I texted my wife and said, this is our last known location.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, we call Liam Neeson, like, we've been taken. Like, come get us. So we go down this hallway, and we go into this room, and there's a lot of people there. There's a lot of people in this room, and I have said it was what I imagined from a movie would be like a drug den. I'm not saying they were doing drugs there, but it was just like, it just had this very shady vibe, and they all saw us, and then they all left. Like, and so we're in there, and then it's like,
They offered us tea, though.
They offered
offer
us tea, and I'm like, I'm thinking in my mind, offer us the video equipment, not tea.
Tea is good. Video equipment is better.
Like, I thought we're just going to walk in, so it's
because there was no video equipment.
There's no video equipment. It was like this was like an
there.
enlarged office with a coffee table in the middle of it, and so we're like, all right, well, we're ready to see the equipment, and I'm thinking, just bring in the cases, let's open them up, and then it was like, oh yeah, you're here for equipment. Yes, like we've flown here for this. And then it just started, the video equipment started to trickle out. Like they had to find it in the back. Like, oh, here's a camera, here's some lenses. And I felt somewhat encouraged because the cameras came out first and like, okay, they're in decent shape. We've got the lenses. And then the audio. The sweet audio gear.
I have pictures. Maybe I'll throw a couple of iPhone pictures in here.
Yeah.
And the tears that were coming down here.
But like the audio equipment came out, and I'm a little bit more reserved person than Ryan is. I was just kind of staring at it, like trying to process that this is really what's happening here. And Ryan came over, and he's like, this won't do. And he immediately picked it up and took it over to Muhammad, who was our fixer, and was like, what else do you have? Because this is not going to work.
Yes. So apparently there was I don't know if it was a breakdown in communication or just trying to push us over. And what happened was they brought out a first piece of gear and like, this isn't going to work, and it was these wireless mics and like, no, we need something, like we actually requested something significantly better than this. Where is it? And I'm like, oh, 5 minutes. 5 minutes. This is how I process this evening. 5 minutes. And then like 30 minutes later, someone comes out with something that's maybe moderately better, but still, in my estimation, a piece of junk. It's like it's been less beat up, but it was never that great to begin with. So we go through a couple iterations of this, and you can cut this out if you want. I remember them saying like, we have to get something better. And my patience is wearing thin at this point, and
it's getting late.
It's getting late. I'm tired. I'm hungry, and we've just had this long flight. And I get the 5 more minutes comment. And that's when I'm like, I've had enough of this conversation. And I said, quit saying 5 more minutes. If you're going to say 5 minutes, get it out here in 5 minutes. And then the laughing started like, oh, that's Arabic time. And I think my comment was, well, you were paid in US dollars.
Yes.
So I can appreciate Arabic time, but I didn't pay you in Arabic pounds. I paid you in US dollars. So I want US results. Like, and I know that could be like a cultural rub, but it was like, I felt like we weren't getting where we needed to get. Like this is serious. We're shooting in 8 hours or less at that point. Like, you have to deliver. Like, the whole point is, you guys had several phone calls with him, like confirming they have the gear. And it was like, they don't have the gear.
Yeah.
And so I felt like, at least it was good. There seemed to be a little bit of panic setting into them. Like, oh, they're not pleased with what we've been delivered. And so that night, then they took us out to eat, and they still really never fully delivered at all.
They did with the food, though. The food was
They took us to food.
They did. Yeah.
But
that helped calm some things down.
I felt at least heard at that point, because at that point, then our fixer and the guy that ran the production company were off talking a lot, smoking a lot of cigarettes, because I think they were nervous. Because I had been like, I am done with you. Like, get this done. But that was kind of, that first night I felt like really helped. It wasn't good. I mean, we were tired. I was, we have to be with these people for the next 12 days, but kind of going, this has got to change. Yeah. And, but I felt like that really kind of set the stage for at least our expectations of what was going to happen afterwards and realities of what was going to happen afterwards.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that's where we immediately knew that you were the right man for the job, because I remember walking down the street to dinner with Jet, and us both looking at each other and being like, dude, like, if Ryan wasn't here, where would this have gone? Like, because I don't know. I mean, like, not that you're a mean person, and I think probably eventually one of us would have spoken up, but I don't know if it would have ever been. I mean, you're a big guy, you know, you have a booming voice, like to stand there and be like, this isn't going to work. Like that
means, it's different than,
there was definitely a fire that was lit. And so,
and I have to say, like, Muhammad, bless his heart, and the whole team eventually, like, I feel like we got to a good place with them. But both with the team in Egypt and the team in Jordan, it started out rough.
Yeah.
And there were cultural differences, there were language hindrances.
Yeah.
And we did the best that we could. Yeah. But I know it was not what we were used to. We were used to coming into country primarily with our own gear.
Right.
So we would bring
that was already a difference for us.
Yeah, and that was the main difference. And then to be at the mercy of what they had, like you said, the cameras, the lenses. So I was fairly pleased because that stuff came out first. And I'm like, this is fine. This is going to be great.
Yeah, but we're not making silent films.
Yeah, Stu's over there in a corner, like curled up in a ball, just, you know.
And
honestly, you weren't.
So.
You were silent, and the color was out of your face. You're just like,
having worked in, in Southeast Asia and even Poland, it was a cultural issue. You know what I mean? Like, and it's just like our expectations as Americans coming into there, and just how they operate.
Yeah.
It's like it is a different language, literally and figuratively. Sometimes when you're saying like, this is my expectation, it's like, well, I'll get there at some point. And we're like, we don't have time to wait for you to get there at some point. We need you to get there now.
And it is like, I think part of that night, and it's probably the same when we've been in Turkey and Israel and when you've been in other places, is like that first 24 hours on the ground is you are two cultures coming head to head with each other. And it comes across not only in production, but in the start times of the day, in the way you're communicating. And it's like,
start times?
Yeah, right. You have American expectations, and then you usually have what is probably Eastern or Middle Eastern expectations. And, you know, we all three know that those two cultures are night and day. And you could argue which one's better, which one's worse, but like you're finding this happy medium. So
yeah, it was. Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of things that it just helped me understand, you know, where were the things that we were concerned about didn't seem to be necessarily things they were concerned about in some ways. And there were times when the things they were worried about, particularly with getting us in there and dealing with the people that we had to be in the places, was rightly placed, and we were worried about the gear. And so, but it's just kind of figuring out how do these two worlds mesh, and it was never easy.
No,
because it wasn't just that we checked out the equipment. We didn't check out the equipment. We looked at the equipment, but we never took the equipment.
We didn't take it with us. Yeah.
So that was the other tricky part of all of this.
Yeah. And that's like for all of us who are so used to being hands-on, to not have the equipment in our hotel rooms where we can charge batteries at night.
Yeah.
Like that was just a hard place to be.
And every morning it seemed like the cameras were reset. Everything was like,
I know.
Like,
they would factory reset everything
this
before.
Equipment.
I did.
Because not only did we get equipment, we got an entourage of like 9 people to handle the equipment.
I was talking to our someone who may be doing the coloring in post-production for us, and I was like, just keep in mind when you open this project after me, some of these clips might be in 30 frames a second, because we didn't realize until after we had shot a couple of shots that they had reset. You know, some of these the color profiles might be off. Just be patient.
Because they're shot on iPhones.
Because they're well, and there are some iPhone shots in there. It was this kind of tug of war where, man, by the time we finished our time with them, I feel like we figured out how to work with them. They figured out how to work with us. And then we had to leave them and find a new crew in Jordan, new gear, and do it all over again.
And new chaos. Yeah, I mean, it was just like, the whole trip was fluid chaos. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, it was just like, it was just, how do we manage a situation that's in front of us right now?
Yeah. And we also, numerous times, Stuart and I said, this is so hard, this is so difficult, but we could not do this by ourselves. Oh, no. Like, this was not 100%. A team of 4 of us could show up in Egypt and start shooting video. Like, we understood we needed them. You know, as difficult as that was, they were able to get us into places and talk to people and make things happen that we just could not have done.
And I don't know if we've shared this.
It was this balance.
I don't know if we've shared this in conversation on the podcast or whatnot before, but like, we had so much trouble with equipment. but our hands were really tied because I think our equipment rental house was directly tied to our access at Mount Sinai.
Yes.
That's correct.
Which, like, just stop and think about the pinnacle scene of the whole documentary is tied to our equipment rental because of the fact that we were going through so many layers of bureaucracy within Egypt.
Yep.
That it was like, you're going to rent these cameras and you're going to rent this subpar audio equipment if you want to go to Mount Sinai.
Because other rental houses had actually denied service to us
Right.
when they found out what we were asking to shoot.
They were making.
And so, yeah, it was one of these, like, this is how we've got to do it. There's no other way to do this. And I will say, what we ended up capturing, not just in Mount Sinai, but through the rest of it, it looks great.
It was good.
And the audience is not going to realize the struggles that Ryan
Right.
had to get
That's
us get us there.
So
right?
let's talk about let's focus on Egypt, because then we'll take a break and we'll talk about Jordan. But what was it like for you directing a documentary in Egypt?
Difficult. I think that one of the things is coming in as an outsider. You guys already done a couple projects together, so like I knew you guys a little bit, I knew Jet a little bit, and I'd had phone calls with the rest of the crew. But it was just like, we're all landing together at this place. I don't know everyone. Not only that, then we also have the equipment issues that seems to be racking up, and then we have the crew that it felt. And then just Egypt itself, you know what I mean? And I know you guys have referenced in the podcast before, like, there's a bus in the middle of like a scene, like,
right,
we don't have
scene,
communication equipment and all that stuff. And so, part of it is trying to go, that was the difficulties. How do we tell the story with all the hurdles that we had in place? It wasn't just like, oh, we can get into the story, we can go into it. It was it's like, here's the hurdle of the crew. Here's a hurdle of just the generic sense of the country, like we have to have a minder with us everywhere we go, here, like, it just felt like, and like, we're learning, not only me learning with the crew, but also, Jeremy and the rest, everybody that was there is like, it was at least initially this really strong learning curve. And so I think that was the difficulty. And then, language barrier also is in there. So I think it was exciting, and then kind of going, how do we tell this story? But, it was difficult at the same time. And I think those sometimes too go in hand, like the difficulty makes it exciting, because you're just like, we're here, it's happening. Right. We've got this timeline, let's go, and so that was, I guess for me, that was that. And getting to interact and trying to dig through some of those stories. And we met some people along the way that were interesting. We got to dig into some of that, but it was difficult, because it wasn't a place where I felt like we could sometimes sit and talk, because it was chaos around. Like, it was just piecing it together as you went. You know what I mean? Like, I know there'd been work that had been done before we went, but then you get there and it's like, here we go. You know what I mean? Like, it's a different, how does this puzzle piece fit together on the ground?
Yeah. And that is hard. I mean, and with any documentary, you're writing it once in pre-production, you're shooting it in production, and then you're a lot of times writing it again in post-production. And that was very much the case. It was like, get in there and get whatever you can, and then we're going to have to spend the time later to put it together and figure out what do we have.
It's like every good story video.
Yeah.
You do all the work on the front side, and then you get there and you go, what's the reality?
Yeah.
What's really happening here? Kind of understanding, here's what we wanted, and then kind of go, here's what's really happening. And that's the thing, is kind of going, here's what we wanted, here's what's really happening. How do we try to bring those two planes together, and realizing then in post it's going to get shaped even more.
Yep.
And so I think that was the piece that was the most interesting, exciting, difficult, was trying to go, taking the vision and then what we had to experience on the ground, and making sure, do we have enough ties there? Do we all feel like we're grounded enough in the story that we want to tell, and move it forward in post?
Yeah. I'm curious.
Yeah.
Because we laugh a lot when we talk about our trip.
Yeah.
And the amount of unique stories that I came home with to share with my family, I'm still telling them, and it's almost been a year. What were some of your favorite moments? Like the things that are sticking in your mind, when people ask you how the trip went, these are the stories and the funny things that you kind of keep relating.
Well, I'm going to say a couple things really briefly. One of them is because it was on my Facebook page. Obviously, did you go to the pyramids? Yes.
Yep.
Beautiful, wonderful pyramids. Did you go inside of one? Yes. Unfortunately.
Unfortunately, yeah.
One of the things that was the funniest thing for me post getting out of the pyramid was like, we're like, I'm excited. I'd always wanted to go to the pyramids, and we're like, oh, we're going to go inside. This is cool. And I see this giant pyramid, and I'm like, oh, this is going to be fantastic. And then you realize they built all this and then built the smallest entrance in the face of humanity. And, I say it's like a 4 foot by 4 foot cube. At least that's how it feels to me. And then again, it's Egypt, so people are going down in the hole and coming out at the same time. Order is out the window. Yep. Forget that.
There's
no entrance.
There's no entrance and exits. It's all whatever happens.
Yeah.
Did you give us the money? That's all we care about. That's all
Go down in the hole.
Yeah. Enjoy. So I'm a big guy, and I'm like, and it's a steep incline. And I'm like, and then, it's back up again. And then I get in there, and it's like, it's just a room. There's not like hieroglyphs on the wall or anything like that. Just like, that happened. And then you're like, oh, I have to get out. And it's the same thing coming back. So that is a memorable story for me, because thinking there's going to be another body inside of the pyramid.
There's about to be another body in here.
It's mine. Good luck getting me out. So that was a funny story. I think you want the most memorable story for me. That's like a legit story. Do you just want funny right now? Or do you want like
whatever you like,
man. You go
Whatever
wherever you want to go.
The most the story that stuck with me the most is when we were at Karnak and we talked to the Egyptologist. Well, two things for this. We tried to do an opening bit with him. Again, I'm gonna scratch us up to cultural differences.
How many times did we?
Jet had this idea of him coming out saying "Welcome to Karnak," thinking like, "Oh, this universally like the music's on, like welcome to Karnak," like we're revealing this to Jeremy, and the guy comes out. The guy was brilliant. I mean, blew me away.
Yeah, it will be in the bloopers.
It will be in the bloopers.
Well, if we have a bloopers, it will be
There's
there.
Like
there are bloopers
takes of him coming out like "Welcome to Karnak," and it was like he was making fun of me, but it was real. And so,
but it was real.
So again, it is blazing hot. We're trying to get something done. We're told at this point
chasing the sun.
We're chasing the sun and chasing the permit, because the permit is like, we have to be out by like 5. It's like 2:00 at this point because we've traveled in. I mean, all the things that could happen. So we're trying to get it done quickly, and this guy's like, it's not translating. So that was funny. But the real thing that the guy said that I thought was really interesting, as we went into the Holy of Holies area there.
Oh, yeah.
And talking about all the sacrifices that would have been made there. And he's telling us about, you look around here, there's all these rams. And he's like, that's a physical manifestation of Ra. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. And he's like, and what I appreciate about our Egyptologist was he was Muslim, but he also understood the Hebrew Bible. And, he talks about, Moses says to Pharaoh, our sacrifices would be detestable to you. And he talks about, well, you think about what the Hebrews might have been sacrificing at the time, it would have been a ram. With Abraham and Isaac, God provided a ram. And that would have made, if the Hebrews are going to sacrifice a ram, that would have been detestable to the Egyptians.
Right.
And so that's a verse that I've read through the Exodus many times. And it's never been like, it seemed, I didn't understand cultural context of some of that. And so to be in that spot and to be having that conversation and to understand better the context of Exodus and what Moses is saying, it was just like, kind of blew me away.
Karnak, I think Karnak especially, there were several spots there where he said things that my mind was blown, because I had never read it that way. And when you stop and think about, this was the influence the Israelites had on, the Egyptians had this influence over the Israelites, the Hebrews. And so they brought some of that stuff with them out of Egypt. And it's like, you could see it like that. Yeah, you're right. That was definitely one of those.
Yeah.
spots.
Just that connection of why Moses would have said our sacrifice would be detestable, and that it had this referent in Egyptian culture.
Yeah.
So that for me was probably in Egypt one of the most fascinating contextual things that, like, for me, that's one of the things we talked about even before we went into this production, is just like, unlike Israel, some of these places are soft ideas of where things happened. But this was, like, for me, like a really hard concrete thing to go like, oh wow,
yeah.
this is a strong reference to Egyptian culture.
Yeah, the influence is here, and it's all around.
Yeah, you're seeing, you're walking down a pathway of rams on both sides.
Yeah.
And sacrifice the testable, and you remember the story of Abraham and Isaac and God providing the ram in the thicket, and it's just like, okay, So that for me, like, was from a very that was the most interesting thing. But I do have to say, I'm going to say the funniest thing to me, and I have a photo of this, and this is not a slant. Everywhere we went, the thing that amazed me most was the amount of trash.
There was a lot.
There was a lot of trash.
Yes.
There was a lot of people. I think Cairo, they said there's 20 million people in the metro area.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
But infrastructure is not, I mean, there is some traffic lights, none, but there is infrastructure that's going on there. And so one of the things that kind of blew me away is we went to an archaeological site, and there had been trash that had been burned right there. Like, there's like 3,500-year-old walls there of buildings. And so everywhere we went, there was just trash. We were driving down the Sinai Peninsula, and I remember our van driver had a trash bag in the car. And we were putting like bottles and stuff in there, to collect the trash in the van. And then we pulled over at one point and stopped on the peninsula wilderness. He takes the bag out, dumps the trash out on the side of the road, and then puts the empty bag back. But what was funny is this is just a funny story. This has no redeeming value to you whatsoever. But then we went to the airport.
Sometimes the podcast doesn't have any
redeeming value in this. There's none.
If you're
I'm just
still
gonna
with
tell you
us,
a story, and I took a
appreciate
photo of
this.
this.
This is
But
amazing.
living like that, we were at the airport, and we went through security. I had a bottle of water, and we had to go through a security checkpoint, and we had to put all our stuff in the security thing, and I had an empty water bottle because there wasn't a trash can around. And we got through security, and I'm picking up my stuff, and I have a tub that has an empty water bottle in it. And the security guard in this nice, very nice airport tiled floor and stuff just takes the water bottle out and just throws it on the floor.
In the airport.
In the airport. So I took
Where
a
does he
photo
think
of
it's
it.
gonna go?
Yeah, like I took a photo of it. Like, this is art. You know what I mean?
Well, in like
just to show how different this place is.
Right.
It's different values, different
yes,
everything.
and that is a very strange cultural thing. Like, and I was in Africa earlier this year, and it's the same way. Us as Americans, we have trash cans, and we think it's wrong for us to just throw stuff out of the car. So we'd get water bottles and whatnot, and we're like looking around for trash cans, and there's no place to put this. And so you think about it, if you do this over and over again every day, eventually you're just gonna be like, I need to dispose of this, and clearly there's no place to do that properly. So I guess I'm just gonna put it on the ground.
Yeah.
Now,
So maybe there is a redeeming value in the story, and that it just further shows the deep cultural divide that
That's right.
that we kind of stepped into.
That's right.
Now we did. It was in Egypt. I guess it was when we left. Was it Tel El Daba, and they were taking us to the museum to see some of the things that they had dug up there. I think that maybe that was the first instance where they had in their minds, I think, these are Americans. When they get hungry, they want American food.
Oh, yeah.
And so we arrive at this museum, and like that is not our team. We love going to these other countries and like
and experiencing
feed us the local food. This is great. But they really were kind of very excited to offer us McDonald's.
Yes.
When we arrived. And yet they offered us something that I had never heard of. The Big Tasty.
The Big Tasty, man.
Big Tasty.
Yeah.
It's this big, on a podcast, I'm trying to describe it now, but think of like McDonald's version of a Whopper. It seemed like that big, that unimpressive.
Big Tasty. And I never had one. I think there was a U.S. reference to this.
Was there
at
now?
some point.
Okay.
I think
There was.
oh
wow.
I think maybe, but
It was brand new to me.
Big Tasty was the
Tasty.
flavor of the day.
And it was like we were just so hungry when that showed up,
Yeah.
and very quickly had to eat because we were waiting to be ushered inside. And that name,
That
name stuck to you.
I got called
Name
Big
stuck to
Tasty.
you for the rest.
Just for reference, my phone still is labeled as Big Tasty's iPhone right now.
Excellent.
Because we're sharing the internet. Well, if you remember, part of it was they wanted to give us McDonald's, but where we were as well, we got out of Cairo. There's no safe place to eat.
Safe place
That's
to
right.
Eat. Right.
Because of the water, right? Because of the water.
I don't know. It was food safety, not like as in danger, like as in physical. Well, I mean, there was physical danger, like to our gastrointestinal systems, but it was like food safety was the thing, and we're going to go to a place that we know has safe food, and that was one of the things as well. Is like once you got out of like a major city, you were out there.
Yeah.
You know, and when we went to Tel Daba, we had armed police with us. I remember that we had the Jeeps. We stopped. We had the
escort all the way.
Yes. You know, we're just bouncing through a field basically, and then we got to here's these 35-year-old walls from a civilization. Oh, and there's the burning trash next to it. You know what I mean? It was just like it was, and then there's the Muslim school.
You know, the school kids over there. Yeah,
the school, elementary school that's letting out. I mean, it was just like. That was the thing for me is just like everything was just together.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was just like, I think when you live in the context of that kind of history, it becomes, it's mundane.
Yeah.
You know, which is weird for us. You know, we don't live in the context of that kind of history buried in the ground around us. I mean, we might have other history that we know of that's referent to us, but we didn't live in it where it's just like, oh, I found something new today.
Yeah.
There it is.
And it was just like, well, it's just here. And then we were definitely the outsiders when we went there. So
very much so.
So Big Tasty, and it seems like other nicknames that really was kind of the flavor.
Well,
I don't know if it was a survival mechanism. Like we've got to find something.
I mean, I'll be honest. There was some survival mechanisms happening.
Just trying to keep track of each other's names because I can't remember American names, let alone. They're speaking in languages that I can't understand. So it was kind of we got picked up from the airport and you were like, you're wearing a Peanuts hat. We're just going to call you Peanuts.
Yeah, this was in Jordan. Yeah, we had a guy, he
was
was wearing a hat that had Snoopy and Charlie Brown. And I'm like, what's that about? He's like, I don't know. It's a cool hat.
Cool hat. All right. Well, you are Peanuts.
Peanuts.
Right?
Yeah. And then I got called Big Tasty from that point.
I'm not sure. I probably don't want to know what they called me through the rest of the trip, but...
it was one of those things. It was just like you got to the point. You talked about when we were at Karnak, we're chasing the sun. I mean, that is one of the things that was like so. I think made this trip tough as well. It's like you had a window in the morning and you had a window in the evening, partly because of the sun, but partly it was so hot in some of these places, and so it made we've got a full day here. But really, the reality of what you had was
what you can actually film.
I remember we walked through Karnak, and it's like 1 o'clock, and we're there, and I mean, of course, sun is beating down. The place is empty. Smart people have left. You know what I mean? Like it is hot. That stone is radiating heat. I mean, it's like intense, and I'm thinking this is going to be rough. And I mean, it got better, but it was still, it didn't. The traffic picked up like 3 o'clock in there, partly because people are like, we got to wait this out. But we're like, we are only here now. And our permit ends like at 5.
Yep.
And it's just like, you have to go. And so it's one of those things where like as a director or, as someone who produces video as well, is like, this is not ideal. This is far from ideal. Because not only are you in a place that you want to experience and capture everything that there is to capture, but you're fighting nature and you're fighting government, and permits, and it's like we're going back. Luckily, our Egyptologists seem to have a little bit of pull there to kind of like work with the police around there. And then, again, Muhammad, our fixer, seemed to, and Ali, who was with the production company, seemed to kind of go, it was interesting. We can stay till 6, and then it's like, maybe 5:45. You know what I mean? It's like there was just it was fluid chaos. It was like, you can stay till 6, and then it was like, well, that cop thinks maybe 5:45, and then it's like maybe 5:30.
And we hadn't really talked about this, but the way it works in Egypt, it is that cop that decides everything. You could have every permit in the world for that space, and that cop might say, you know what, I think you're going to do this.
You want to talk about Pink Shirt Guy?
Right.
Or
well,
that's a whole other podcast.
Yeah. But like that's seriously the way it was. Pharaoh. It's like that cop was the one that you pay, and then you magically get more time.
It's kind of why did we buy permits?
Why did we buy permits? That just got us into the country. That's about it.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, but that's exactly what happened. I mean, it was like we knew we were supposed to be here. They knew we were going to be there, but it was still a giant question mark until we could get the cameras out and start recording. I mean, it was always, it felt like, well, here's what's supposed to happen.
Right.
Is this really going to happen? I don't know. You know, and we had that, you know, when we went up Mount Sinai, it happened then, and coming down, I even remember thinking, I imagine the same issue is going to rear its ugly head again. And sure enough, it did.
And it did.
And yet, I know we didn't have the amount of time at each location that we wanted, but we got to go everywhere we wanted to go.
I don't
eventually.
I don't think we left that country without footage that we intended to go.
Right, and there were even a couple
everything.
of spots. One of my favorite things was we had gone to the brick making factory, and then on our way out, it was like, hey, there's a family out there baking bread with this oven, and it's like, hey, we've got some time. We hopped out and shot this scene, and I'd say story-wise, a fairly inconsequential scene, but it actually was that was the type of shooting that I love.
That's where you get the flavor. You get
Where,
the local flavor.
Local flavor. It's not scripted. We actually had the cameras on us, so we hopped out of the car and just started shooting.
Yeah, one of the rare times.
One of the rare occasions.
Right.
And so we were able to, on a couple of different occasions, get these kind of bonus moments.
And I want to make sure I say this. You know, like, we ran into issues, partly we're a large crew, we were shooting there, but like when it got down to the people level, like the people were very welcoming to us. You know what I mean? Once you got outside of the governmental, you know, bureaucratic system there, the people were very welcoming to us. You know, we made that stop and they were so pleased that we were just there and listening to them and talking to them about their family and
we never
the bread.
Met any Egyptians, and even our crew, super friendly, bend over backwards to make stuff happen within the realm of what they could control.
Yeah.
So,
and I'm still friends with several of them on social media now, Muhammad and Lama and our other fixers. Like, they're good-hearted people. I could see many times where Muhammad especially, it's like he wanted to make things happen for us, and his hands were just as tight as ours. And it's like,
well, let's do this. Let's take a break. Let's take a break because we could keep talking. Because I do want to talk about Muhammad a little bit, and then talk about the time in Jordan, starting with the crossing of the Red Sea, which was its own experience. But we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Hey everyone, we're going to get back to the show in just a second, but before we do, I wanted to tell you about our new website. It's got all of the great Appian Media content that you're used to on it, and it's got a new shop section. It's organized with all the workbooks, DVDs, Blu-rays, and right now, for our podcast listeners, we have a promo code for you. Podcast20 is the code. If you take that, just type it in at checkout, and you'll get 20% off your entire purchase on our website. So go to appianmedia.org, go to the shop section, and use promo code podcast20 at checkout for 20% off your order. Now, let's get back to the show. All right, we've been talking with Ryan Sarver. He is the director of Out of Egypt, and it's just been a really good conversation so far. We've been able to reflect. We've been able to process.
It's been very therapeutic.
It has been.
For
It's
me,
very,
right?
it is therapy in a way. It is therapy in a way.
You gotta face it, talk about it.
Yeah.
And only
learn and
we
grow
know,
from
you know,
it.
it's like you got to share it with people who experienced it with you. You know what I mean? Like, that's what it's all about.
That's right. So we've talked about Egypt primarily, but we're going to get into Jordan now, because I think there was maybe in our minds this idea that Egypt is a little bit chaotic, but things will get better in Jordan. And
That's a lie.
So I wanted to stop here for a second and talk about Muhammad, because Muhammad, we had a little bit of a hiccup with Muhammad.
Yes.
Muhammad is actually not Egyptian. He's not Jordanian. He is Palestinian, which is a big difference. And he lives in the Gaza Strip,
correct?
Which is even like
super Palestinian.
Super Palestinian. Even I think without getting into politics, I think even Palestinians go, Gaza Strip is a little bit. So he actually didn't accompany us into Jordan.
Yeah, he had his own struggle getting into Egypt just to get to us, to meet us in Egypt.
Yeah, he got into Egypt, and then when we went to Jordan, he was going to go with us.
Correct.
Had a visa.
They revoked his visa at the border. And so he had to basically send us on our way to Jordan and say, Godspeed.
And that was heartbreaking.
That was heartbreaking.
I mean,
because,
we really,
yeah.
I feel like
Yeah.
we had really kind of bonded with him and
mm-hmm.
had figured out how to work along with him. And then, man,
And
he
yeah.
just had to go.
He had to just
I'm
kinda
sure this will be,
well.
you guys will do great.
And there was one moment that I think kind of really got to me when we were leaving him at the port. He kind of, well, we wanted to give him a tip, and he was like, I don't want to take that. I'm not going to take your money. And then he kind of pulled aside this like police officer, and he spoke to him in Arabic. I don't know if you guys remember this. And then he sent us in, and later that police officer, I kind of was talking to him a little bit. Muhammad had said, treat these guys, they're my brothers. They aren't a client, they're my brothers. Take care of them and make sure they get on that boat to go to Jordan. And I was like, oh my goodness, like,
Yeah.
that's the kind of relationship we'd built with him.
Yeah.
And we had been talking to Muhammad for months, even leading up to that. So I think he was really torn up that he couldn't go with us. But then we got into Jordan.
Eventually.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about our Red Sea crossing.
So again, we all had in our mind, like, just like the Israelites were exiting Egypt to go to the Promised Land, we felt like this is our literal Exodus journey. We're crossing the Red Sea to get to Jordan.
Get out of Egypt.
Like, this is going to be so great. The boat leaves like 4 hours late.
Literally 4 hours.
Like 4 hours late. And this is not a luxury liner by any stretch of the imagination. Funny things. It's rough. We're filming. All of things.
Yeah.
And, we get on this boat. And again, it felt like very chaotic. It was like, well, you can't take your bag up with you under the upper deck. And so there's just this cart. And this guy's like, just put your bag in there. You're like, well, there's no like checking system. Like, just throw it in this cart. Yes. And like, okay.
And my air tag identified that my bag got halfway across the ocean and then stopped there.
Somehow,
and we kept on going. I was like, I think they threw the luggage
overboard. That doesn't
overboard.
mean that your air tag quit. They might have thrown it in the ocean. At least that's how we felt at the time. But that was, crazy already, like 4 hours late. And it was, we get into Jordan. And again, like, everybody's prepared for us. And we went from a crew of like 9 assisting people to 2 of them were drivers.
Yes.
One of them was our fixer, and the other one was like our
actual camera.
Yeah. And we thought, oh man, this is going to be great. And then it was like second verse, same as the first.
Yes.
It was, we got in late. Of course, we're 4 hours late, going through security, getting through visas and passport
customs.
Which
again, we're in somebody's office who chain smokes as he's like looking at our passport.
This is drug room part 2, but in an official, maybe
this
more official capacity.
This guy in a military uniform is going to decide whether or not we stay in Egypt or come into Jordan.
And it was just like, it was just, everything was bizarre to me. You know what I mean? Like, it was just like, they know we're coming. They know who we are. They're looking for us. Like, there's the Americans, like, here we are. And so that turned into a whole, we were at port for what? Another 2-3 hours?
I think so. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We're all dying on the inside. I mean, we're dying on the inside the whole time. So we get there, and I'm trying to remember, where did we stay the first night? Did we go to the desert?
We went straight to Wadi Rum and stayed in those tents.
Oh, yes. Okay. So we went to Wadi Rum the first night, and we're driving out in the desert.
It's the middle of the night.
It's the middle of the night, and we're like turning down like this desert road. Like they pass it because you can't see. It's just like a desert road. Right. And you're texting your wife the first night in Egypt.
It's like, we will die out here.
We'll die out here.
They'll never find us.
And we get to this place, and it's beautiful. We're eating outside, but we're exhausted. And again, we're learning the equipment, but we have to start. The sun's going to come up. We got to start next morning. So I remember saying to Lama, who is our fixer, God bless her soul, let's meet at 5 a.m. 5 a.m.
Which, that stinks for American production time.
Nobody liked that. None of us wanted to do that.
No. And they were tired too. They'd been up for a long time because for some reason they'd been up really late the night before at the rental house. Anyway, everybody's tired. We have to start at like 5 a.m. So I'm there. Jet's there. You're there. You're there as well.
I think so.
Yeah. No llama.
No gear.
5:20. no llama, no gear. And then finally, because we're all dealing with WhatsApp at this point, like we don't have like direct phone numbers, and somehow something happens. Here comes llama, and panic, sweating. I just remember her like sweating profusely. It's like 5:45. They've all overslept their alarms. Sun is starting to like come up. We're wanting to get time lapses and shoot all this stuff. And it was like, yeah, sorry, overslept. And
we have one night in the desert with beautiful sunrise footage.
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. Yeah. So coping mechanism, you know what I mean? Like it's one of these things again, like we're trying to, I know we're going to have a busy day that we have to do. And so trying to kind of keep it together. I mean, obviously I'm
upset.
There you go.
That's the word.
That's the word.
Let's use that word.
Yes. You know, because I'm like, we have been hustling to get here, and nothing's been smooth, and we're tired. And I think part of it was the expectation we were going to have something better. And, you know, hope can kill you. And so that's what it felt like at 5:40 when no one's around, and we're hoping this is going to be different, you know, and it's not. And so, you know, trying to keep her cool. But then it was like we got into the day and it was like we're not near anything. We didn't have AA batteries for the wireless mics.
That's right.
And so it just, and some of the, and it, not only did we have new equipment, it was different brands of equipment. And so I had some experience with Sony equipment. We'd been on Canon. You guys had experience with Canon. I had some experience with Sony. But again, nothing set up for us. No one knows how we're shooting. And it turned into this, like, again, run.
Right.
Run.
And one of my favorite pictures, and we'll share it here in the podcast if you're watching on YouTube, is you sitting at this table in this castle, like trying to set up the equipment while we're trying to get the sunrise.
Yeah.
It was that kind of situation.
It was just, you know, it's one of those things like you don't have time to be mad about it. Yeah. You just have to go.
You just have to go.
And then I can rage about it later.
Right.
Yeah. And if people can picture it, because this is around the area where like Tatooine, Star Wars kind of stuff. So imagine the just endless sea of desert with cliffs in the background. You know, this is not a place that we could just hop over to the local convenience store and buy some more AA batteries.
Yeah, I think they went to a gas station that was like 30 minutes away.
Right.
Let me tell you, those batteries lasted about 20 minutes apiece. So we were just like chewing through them.
Yeah.
Oh, because I remember they brought like 100 of these batteries. You paid way too much money for them, and they were terrible. But it was like, this is the only option you have that we have. I mean, it's beautiful, and we're trying to get the job done, but it just like, it took a while. And, you know, the cameras that were available to us, the big cameras were really great, but they're heavy, you know, and then like we're trying to figure out how do we get this stuff through the desert? How do we rig this stuff? And so I think we got some great stuff there. I mean, naturally it was beautiful. We had a drone pilot while we were there.
Oh, man.
Oh, my goodness.
Unbelievable.
Talk about him.
What would I call him?
We called him Mavic.
No, the general.
The general.
Because apparently this guy had been in the military. I don't know.
I might start crying. It's so funny.
And he had, I would say, like a manservant that was with him assisting him.
Yes.
So this guy, we knew he was there to help us and to shoot for us, but it was like, hey, don't sit with you.
Don't talk to him.
Don't talk to him.
Yep.
Don't look at him. Don't breathe the air in his presence. Like, it was one of these guys that was like, this guy is, yeah.
But I finally found an inn, and it was like at the final hotel as we were leaving, and I sat down and he was sharing with me the footage. So he was finally giving me. What you
were speaking
all
his
I
language.
All I had to do was ask him about his work, and suddenly, like
he opened up.
He spoke more to me in that last 30 minutes than he had the previous 5 days. And
so he talked to you for 2 minutes.
Right. Yes. But it was a quality 2 minutes. He was so talented, but it was like he was like a ghost pilot. We would show up and we would be doing our stuff, and he'd have like come up beside us, and you didn't even know he was there. And the drone's swooping around doing this crazy stuff, and then he'd like go and sit in the Jeep. Wait for us to go to the next.
Okay, so I want to keep
this manservant had the umbrella. I'm just kidding. He didn't have an umbrella for him, but I expected it.
So I want to finish this story because I believe Wadi Rum was our low point of the production. Because I remember sitting in that hotel tent, whatever camp it was, at that night, and all of us were just absolutely like devastated. We were done. So talk about what did the general he shot for us in Wadi Rum, but talk about. Do you know where I'm going with this?
Are you talking about the evening with the?
Yes, I'm talking about the evening.
Okay, so again, we're chasing the sun. We've had a hot day out in the desert,
And it hasn't gone well.
Driving on trucks.
It has not gone well, and it's
sand dunes.
and I had basically told the general, like, just shoot stuff. At this point, we were so consumed with trying to get the gear, again, late start. We're so consumed with trying to get the gear stuff, and then just kind of going, where do we want to be in this desert? Trying to figure out stuff like, it was hard to navigate all of that three at the same time. So I'm like, do your thing. So we went back, and then we went back out. And so we were supposed to we were going to do something with the camels. I remember this. Again, sunset, camels.
Sounds great.
There's a clip of me dancing at some point and singing a song to Jeremy because we're interviewing the camel. A defense mechanism.
True story.
Like
We interviewed a camel. He just kind of blew past that. But.
We interviewed a camel. Well, partly because they're like, oh, this guy's going to come with the camel, and he's going to be down here. And so we go down there, and we're just waiting. And there's
Camel's
a camel
there.
there. Camel's there. The sun's going down, and I'm kind of going, where's this at? And then they come down. Oh, no, we're going to get in the Jeeps, and we're going to go. And I'm like, anyway, we are running as fast as we can to get to a nice shot with a camel. Sun's going down, get a shot with Jeremy kind of reflecting on the time in Wadi Rum. And, so we're all stressed to the max. And then we're driving, and then the trucks stop, and there's something, I think it was a text message or something got across. The general has crashed his drone and lost the footage.
We can laugh about it now because we know that we actually got most of the footage.
We got most of the footage. And I'm like, two things. This is a giant desert. There are some hills, but how do you crash your drone?
You crash it into
Number
what?
one.
Did he
how
hit a
does this
camel?
happen? Like this drone has sensors all over it to tell you where you are, and there's things coming up.
Pretty sure
you're in a desert. Like as far as you can see, there's not a thing to crash into. But the general crashed into the thing you could crash into. Okay,
But, like the way he flew his drone, he didn't just like.
I called him
crash
Maverick.
it.
Yeah, he was. He was really embracing, the fighter pilot mantra. Like, you know what I mean?
Dogfighting something.
Rubbin's racing kind of deal. Like he'd get in close and he flew it like he rented it.
But it was to me it was the progression of the story, where it's like I actually encountered him and his bodyguard, whatever he was, right? And he's got a piece of the drone. And they're kind of looking around for something. A very small
piece of the drone, because evidently the rest of it has just
he's got pieces of the drone.
And so I'm like, what are they looking for? They're looking for...
It's dark.
We have now become dark. Right.
Until the sun is like just, like we're going to dusk. So
what are we looking for?
And so it's like...
Yeah.
I can't say what I was thinking, but like we all have to go look for this thing. Like,
because the card, what's the thing?
The card,
like,
and so
how big
again,
is it?
Language,
yeah,
language is the thing.
Oh.
So he had a drone that had like a hard drive on it, and then there's a card, and so I'm thinking he's lost like this hard drive that goes on this thing, and we're like, well, what footage is on there? Everything. So we are in this place for one day. This guy has crashed a $5,000 drone, and we have no footage. This is what's being relayed. As the sun's down, we are exhausted. Like, we're all just dying to eat food. Things are going well. And so it's like, oh, let's go to the mountainside. Because we found this one piece over here. Let's start looking for this. And so, rightfully so, everybody, the dissension in the group is starting to grow. Like, we just got to let it go. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm just like, we're going to look for it here for a little bit. You were ready to go, I think. You were ready to go. You need to get back.
Because I knew we weren't looking for a hard drive. I was
Again, there was a language
I know what
thing
he
that
was
was
flying.
happening.
I know what he was flying. We were looking for something this big.
Oh, no, not even that.
And then I realized
we're looking all around for this, because I'm thinking we're looking for this thing that like might be found in the desert, maybe, if God willed it for us. But then I come to find out it's a micro SD card.
Micro
SD card.
Which is like smaller than my pinky nail. And I'm just like, we out.
That's a wrap.
That's it.
That thing probably never touched the ground.
Well, it's one of those things, like if the wind caught it, it would just float up there like a leaf. It's so light. And
back to Egypt.
Back to Egypt. Like the desert has claimed another victim. It's a micro SD card. And so luckily, again, because he never spoke to us directly, it was always through the manservants that we finally figured out it was the micro SD card. And it was like, but he had offloaded some of the stuff earlier in the day. But we spent probably 30 minutes out there.
Because we did, at a moment, we did think, great, everything that we have captured is gone.
And
as far as on the drone,
if you're trying to tell the scope of the wilderness, you need to have a shot that shows the scope. When we'd done some stuff with Jeremy where it was flying over and he goes over this hill and it's like this opening canyon. It's like beautiful. We need this to help give a sense of place and context. And then we're like, oh, he crashed it and we've lost it. So that was, and then there was some wild driving back. Yes. Anyway, so that was a low point. I mean, it was like we were, it had already been a long day. We'd been up since 5 a.m. The sun's gone down. We needed to eat. We were exhausted, hot, sweaty. And then you add in a potential loss of a major narrative element. And it was.
And so if anyone's wondering, like you had said, he had shot for the first half of the day and all the stuff with Jeremy out in the wilderness. He had actually offloaded that. We didn't find that until later. And the way this drone worked is, even though he's recording it on the drone itself, it's saving to this this potato chip piece that no one will ever find again. It was also recording to his controller, although in a lower quality. Right.
So we had something.
We had something, and so I still have it. Maybe through AI, I'm hoping to potentially upscale it. Right. And that was never a possibility until 2 years ago. But we haven't actually shown Ryan the clip recently to our members. We actually showed them. We cut that scene together using that drone footage, using the footage through the sand. Like it hits well. I look at it and going like, people do not understand.
They don't understand
how many times I thought I was going to die or kill someone during the production of that particular scene. Well, but man, it
looks good.
It worked out.
Jeremy's VO is great, and when we showed it to the members the donors on the donor call, several of them said, if this is at all a representation of the whole documentary, you've got a home run. Wow. Which, I mean, like, what that says to me is, like, we all are sitting here laughing about it now because it was such a horrible moment or low point, but, like, even out of that is something that's powerful.
But isn't that just like God, right? When we think this thing is lost, we are done, this is over, and yet I really do. I see God working in the struggles of this production. I've already seen benefits, even though the thing's not even finished yet, to go, actually, this, I believe, will still accomplish great good.
Absolutely.
And
I mean,
it's made us better as a team. After the therapy and after the
no doubt.
Well, and I think that's the struggle. You know, like as I look at it as a video producer myself, and anyone else that's produced a video, you always feel like this could have been better. I could have done this differently. This would have been better. You know, and it's Jet and I had this conversation a couple times. Like, I've never made a video that I liked. You know what I mean? But yet the audience, you know what I mean? Because we know the backstory about what has happened and the toil to make it, and kind of going, yeah, that would have been better. But sometimes kind of going, no, what is what's good. You know what I mean? Like it's more of a reflection on us and what we think about it than what it is and what it accomplishes. And, you know, as you said, I think that's God work, you know, through pieces like this to kind of go, it's not my work. You know, it's his work through it.
Right.
Yeah. So let's bring this home as we start to wrap it up. But, like, talk about getting to Mount Nebo. And I think, you know, I can only speak for me, but I think that was kind of a high point because not only from the biblical story, but for us in this journey. And so many times we started comparing our journey to this point, like the Israelites' journey to that point. But kind of talk about where were you feeling as you were kind of wrapping this whole project?
Yeah, I mean, I was feeling a sense of relief. You know what I mean? It's one of those, as I mentioned, it felt like on this, and you guys had mentioned in your previous trips, you had time in the evening to kind of reflect, you know, in your previous trips. Like this one, we just didn't have that opportunity. I mean, we were living on the ragged edge. Like, and so it was one of those things where it's like, how much time do I have to process? Like it was like, I'm finishing this day to start thinking about the next day, and I'm going to sleep for 4 hours to get up and, do I take a shower or not, or I just ride with the stink? You know what I mean? Like, that was, you're making value judgments at that point. And so to get to Mount Nebo, I mean, that was, what I loved about it is going through, starting in Egypt, being on the Nile, and kind of getting a sense of, and this is, I felt like the desert in Egypt was something. We were in Mount Sinai, but then you get into Wadi Rum. And I remember being in that desert, and we're chugging water. Number one, we drink way more water than Egyptians or people in Jordan do. I don't know how that works, but they've acclimated. But we're pounding water. And I remember being out there for like 30 minutes. I'm like, man, I'm thirsty again. And you look around and there's nothing. There might be a random bush out there, but like there's no water, and realizing you are totally relying on God's provision in that area. I'm glad we had trucks. I'm glad we had bottles of water, but thinking about a people moving through there. So that was one of the things that really hit me while we were in that desert. And then kind of going to Mount Nebo. Finally getting there, you're moving out of this place that's like pure, at least in mind, desolation. Like I'm in a truck and I've got water and I know I'm going back to eat like incredible food, but I'm also like, I'm ready to get out of the desert. And kind of going, but when I don't have a mode of transportation like this, and like I'm moving with this people, God's provision, and to get to Mount Nebo, and you look over this mountain and you start to see green. You start to see, now there's the Dead Sea down there, which is dead. But, like, with Moses coming over this and seeing fertile land, like coming from this place of true desolation to a place of life, so that for me was like, it kind of felt, we talked about this, like that was my journey as well. As like, we felt like we have been trugging, I don't want to make much of our struggle, like I'm still an American that just had a rough couple weeks, going through a different country, but it felt like, okay, there's a release, like we have arrived to something that was symbolically for us and, very real for the Israelites as they come over that mountain.
And it's true. We saw brown, and then green. And you can look at a satellite image of Egypt and Israel, and you have green in the delta, which is kind of where they were in Goshen.
Yeah.
And then you have green in Israel.
Yeah.
And so you're right. Like, I mean, just geographically being able to look at that and go, that's God's provision. That's the only way they could have gotten from point A to point B was
Absolutely.
God's provision. And that's what we felt in terms of like driving through the desert. And yeah, Mount Nebo, even though it was smoky that day, you can still see, you're like, okay, there's green over there. I can see it. You know the Jordan River's down there, which is fresh water. And it's like, that's...
you've been taken to a place that can sustain you.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like you've gone from a place... And I think, when we think about the Israelites... As we read the Exodus account saying like, why did you take us from that? Yeah. Why did you take us? Like, did you bring us out here to die? I could totally see that. I could see myself in that story.
Yep.
To kind of go, why did you bring us out here to die? Because if you look around, like, there's no escape. You know what I mean? Like, and you've taken me from this place. Yes, I was enslaved, but I had my basic needs met, and kind of going, God's calling them and Moses is leading them, and, they eventually get there after a wicked generation dies. But then you kind of go, you see like this is where I have for you. And so that was, from a spiritual aspect, a spiritual aspect, like that was meaningful for me as well, to kind of go, you see why, again, referencing back to Karnak, why they couldn't stay, like it had to be a time, but that it had to be God that brought them through, and then to see the promised land on the other side of it. So that was, to see that, I think was really interesting. It was, again, you're in a place where, and it felt a little bit more like Israel in some places, because there was a church that had been built on Mount Nebo. It was more of these places like in Israel where there's some kind of, I don't want to say tourist, but some kind of something's happening there to bring people in. So it wasn't quite as the experiences we'd had previously, but it just has a meaning. You start to get the sense of what that meant for God's people as you kind of come over that top.
Yeah,
and it was such a satisfying evening for us. We had arrived when we intended. We found a spot that actually took us away from that structure that had been built, which I know was important to you and for all of us, because we hadn't encountered that really at all.
Right.
And then to find that spot on the hillside, to shoot those scenes at the time that we wanted to get the drone up, and then just to go, hey guys, that's it.
Yeah, it was satisfying to say, like, that's a wrap.
That's a wrap.
Yeah. You know, like for us to, I mean, that was, I remember the first couple days we were in Egypt, and I referenced this before we even started this podcast. You know, you're excited to go, like, man, this is going to be an adventure. And then, like, 2 days in, you're like, I remember texting my wife saying, this was a terrible mistake. You know, it was a thing that I questioned myself. Can I manage this? You know what I mean? Like, it was, I felt I was questioning myself. You know, am I capable of doing this? Like, you know, this trip cost a lot. There's a crew here that's relying on me, and I'm feeling inadequate to deal with the multitude of challenges. And you guys were encouraging me through some of that stuff. You know, like, I can be big and brash, but, like, I have my own insecurities about myself, and kind of going, this is a terrible mistake. But to be at the end of it then, and to say it's like, I felt like this has been, it was good for me. You know what I mean? Like, to grow as a director, and through the team and through the challenges. You know, it's like, you directed this, you can do anything, you know.
Right.
But to go on that journey myself through some of that stuff, and to come to the end of it and say that's a wrap was, it was a big deal. You know what I mean?
It's a personal growth.
It's a personal growth. Yeah. I mean, it was spiritual growth and personal growth to kind of, you know, it's one of those things you got to fight through it. And I mean, I don't know how you guys felt, but there's times there's like, man, I'm fighting, you know, like you just like, I just got to go. I got to wake up and I go, and like every bone in my body is telling me to slow down. You know, I got sick like on the second day.
Oh, right.
Yeah. I got sick on the second day. I thought it was heat, but then I had a fever that night. Like, so, I mean, like I was, you know, like I just felt like it would have been easy for me to give up, but you know, it was well worth the journey, you know, when we get up there to see that, and to see that whole story in such a condensed timeline,
right?
To go from this place to see this, to go through a desert, to be up on Mount Sinai, and then to come to Mount Nebo, you know, I thought that was really special to experience it in that kind of timeline, to see that whole story of God through all that.
Yeah. Well, listen, we were thrilled to have you on board. We were glad to have you with us. I think the production was better for it, and
definitely was.
Thanks for making that crazy decision to say.
Yeah. Tell me where it's going first.
Next time we sit down and have
but
coffee.
you wouldn't have said
yes. No, just go ahead and just say the country first, and then say, do you want to have a meeting? I'm teasing.
That's a good idea.
Look, they're going to have these things over there. They're called Big Tasties. They're going to be amazing.
Yeah.
Don't worry about where. Don't worry about where.
We did eat McDonald's again in Jordan.
It's true.
And I have to say, I thought it was, because they even said it's better than America's McDonald's.
Yeah. And
I'm going to agree with them.
Oh.
I would kind of agree with them.
Well, listen, I ate more McDonald's in those 2 weeks than I'd eaten in the previous 5 years. So
yeah, that's true. That's true. But man, that was good McDonald's.
It was. It was good McDonald's. Yeah. Well, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ryan. We've enjoyed this. And yeah, I think there'll be some more phone calls. And would you do it again? I mean, not to put you on the spot.
I would do it again. You know what I mean? Like, I think this is, I'm going to get philosophical here. I mean, but that's how it always is.
Yeah.
You know, I'm in trepidation. I'm nervous. It's hard. But you kind of, you know, when you can get some distance and you can look back, say, I'd do it again. I would really push to make things different. You know what I mean? I'm never riding a train in Egypt ever again. I'm sorry.
No, we didn't even get to talk about that.
We didn't even talk about
the death train.
There's videos online.
There are.
I will never ride a train in Egypt ever again. Like, they have planes. We're riding them. So, but you know, like, there are things I would do differently, but I'm thankful for it, you know, and it's, again, like, as you kind of talk, like, there's growth, like you grow in it and you become stronger in it, and you kind of go, I can do this. We can do this. And there's benefit to doing, not just for ourselves, but like in the product that you deliver, that it, you know, can help. You know, I want more people to have context of what the scripture is like that it is rooted in a reality.
Yep.
Like, it is rooted in a real place and a real history and real time with real people, you know, and that, I think that's the ultimate benefit out of all of it, is we live in a time, it seems like, where nothing's real. You know, it's always, it's in my head. No, this is real. This is a place. Yep. These are the people, and this happened. So,
It's a great place to end.
Agreed.
Throughout this season of Inroads, we'll continue highlighting others that are using digital media to spread the good news of the Gospels. And we'll also pull the curtain back on Out of Egypt and talk with various members of our own team as we develop, fundraise, and produce our most ambitious, challenging, and rewarding project that we've ever done. That's next time on Inroads. Inroads is a production of Appian Media. We're a nonprofit video production company that is 100% crowd-funded. If you're interested in learning more about how you can support Appian Media so we can continue to create more great free content, visit us at appianmedia.org.